Welcome to the CPD session, the last one of today, and all about achieving your QTLS, okay, qualified teaching and learning skills. Just before we start, and I don't think it will be a problem anyway, but in terms of housekeeping, your mute, camera, and chat box, the camera and mute function are disabled anyway, okay, so you won't be able to at this stage show yourself or speak, okay. The chat box is there. There's a Q&A box within the functions that you should have, and by all means you can type your questions in there as we go along. I'll not answer any questions to interrupt the actual session. We'll get them all answered at the very end. I think that makes more sense. So anything you think of as we progress through, by all means, just do that, type them in there. And finally, of course, respect for all. Just make sure whenever you are communicating, we use a chat box, or if you do get a chance to speak verbally out loud, make sure that's respectful conversation and respectful words that we use, okay. Following on, at the end of this particular session, I will be sharing a link to a feedback survey, and I would appreciate your feedback if at all possible, if you get a chance later on this afternoon. And again, just want to apologize for the technical issues at the start. We've now got everything sorted, I believe, so we're able to start. This is one of these challenges these days we have with technology, and nothing we can do about it. So first off, what is QTLS? So QTLS stands for Qualified Teacher Learning and Skills Status, okay. And basically what it is, if you don't know already, it is a way of demonstrating your professionalism within the further education and training sector primarily. It helps practitioners, and when I say practitioners, I mean trainers, teachers. I mean, teachers is a word that's used quite a lot, but really trainers and teachers are the same. People like to call themselves different things, but ultimately they're both trying to achieve the same aims and objectives. So it helps teachers and trainers develop their career. It helps them showcase their skills and experience that they've built up to that point. To not only their colleagues, but also perhaps their current employers and even future employers as well. And also, to a certain extent, it does add a side of credibility to any teacher or trainer who is responsible for a cohort of learners, or within any qualification that they're responsible for. Registration for the QTLS status can only be completed through the SET, or Society of Education and Training. So a question I'm quite often asked is, what is the difference between QTS and QTLS? Okay, they're two terms that are quite often confused, and it really is quite simple, and you'll see this as I break it down. So first off, if you hold the QTLS, you are recognized within law as equivalent to those who hold the QTS, or Qualified Teacher Status, okay? And that became law in April of 2012. I will share a link later on to the Gov UK website where you will see specifically where it mentions this. So again, thinking back to a couple of examples I've had with various learners and colleagues, we've had issues with QTLS and confirming its credibility. It is really quite simple. It's in law, and therefore employers should, and will respect that fact. Okay. Those who have QTLS can teach across various subjects, and that's one of the benefits of QTLS, if you like, as opposed to QTS. QTS is usually associated with one particular discipline within schools. Should it be maybe geography, history, English, whatever it may be. within QTLS, it's recognized as a status that someone has gained through teaching, you know, a myriad of different subjects. It can't just teach one, of course, but it can, you know, transfer across various subjects. And again, it should be on equal pay and conditions as those who have the QTS. As I mentioned, the QTS is awarded to primary and secondary teachers on successful completion of their initial teacher education, or ITE. And one form of ITE would be the PGCE. Okay, there are various forms of ITE. And again, it really depends in some part to what part of the UK you're in, what ITE programs there are. Okay, but really PGCE will probably be the most common example of an ITE. Criteria. So when I mention criteria, I'm going to talk about what criteria you will need to apply for QTLS. Okay. And again, people often get confused that once they complete their level 5 diploma in education training, for example, that they're automatically entitled to apply for QTLS. That's not the case at all. It's only part of the actual criteria. So please, by all means, ask any questions in this at the end, and do have some links to follow on from this to find out more information. Okay, but just to kick us off, initially you need to hold a teaching qualification at level 5. Okay, so there's no way around it at all. And in terms of that teaching qualification, you still can apply for QTLS. You can sign all the forms, you can tick all the boxes, you can pay your money, but you have 2 weeks from the issue of your portfolio as you join the program to be able to evidence all your criteria. Okay, it's called a checkpoint, the initial checkpoint. Okay, so at that stage, you will need to have in your hand, so to speak, your certificate for level 5 DET or whatever other level 5 qualification, teaching qualification that you're going to use for meeting the criteria. Next, we have a level 2 Maths and English qualifications. And again, don't just think necessarily that because you have the DET, you may have a PGCE, you may have the DETLS, the older version, or other similar teaching qualifications, that you don't need this. Okay, it's not the case at all. You still need to evidence the fact that you hold Maths and English to level 2. Okay, so regardless of a subject you're going to teach, to apply for this professional formation, you need to hold this. And when we say level 2, it's graded at you know, a level C, okay, or above. And you will be expected to, again, evidence the certificates relating to that. Okay. And again, the links as well, folks, I'll share at the end. Okay, but those links will take you through to the actual types and versions of level 2 Maths and English and parts of the UK that you can use. Okay, so that's quite useful as well. Hold a level 3 qualification in the subject or subjects that you're going to teach. So unlike QTS, as I mentioned, professional formation leading to QTLS is not based on a single subject specialism. Your portfolio of evidence will draw upon all subjects that you teach. Okay, so there could be more than one. You must disclose all subjects taught to post-14 learners during the professional formation period, even if teaching takes place for different organizations. It doesn't matter. Okay, you still need to declare that. You need to, at this stage, also upload a copy of the highest qualification in every subject that you're going to be teaching within QTLS, or evidence that you're going to teach within QTLS. And they have to be above level 3, by the way. Okay, that's very important. They need to be above level 3. But again, from experience, these can be in anything, whatever your subject specialism are. I guarantee you there's a place for you on a QTLS program, providing you meet the criteria. You need to have access to, well, to evidence of fact that you can teach, okay, within a further education training setting for a minimum of 4 hours a week. Now, it doesn't sound very much, and it isn't very much, but that needs to be the case throughout the duration of the 6 months. Okay, so you need to ensure that you have access to those teaching hours. Now, those teaching hours can come from different locations, okay, because you may be teaching different subjects in different locations, so that's okay. But just bear in mind, you want to try and keep that continuous pattern of at least 4 hours up until the required portfolio submission time. Okay, so just so you're aware. All the evidence, because you will be asked for timetables and training programs, so all the evidence must come from group teaching. Okay, and that's very important, group teaching. Some evidence can be one-to-one, but by and large, the majority has to be group teaching. I mentioned timetables, so again, within that first 2 weeks, the timetable will be required as well. So again, it's something that you can prepare in advance of the 2-week initial checkpoint to have all your ducks in a row, as it were. Then you want to have identified a suitable supporter at this stage. Okay, we'll go on and talk more about a suitable supporter later on in the presentation, but just so you're aware, the supporter themselves need to have a teaching qualification, okay, and they should have the competence and ability to comment on your practice, your development practice throughout the process, and provide a confirmation statement on your completion. Okay. They cannot be taken themselves QTLS or ATS, which is advanced teacher status, at the same time you're completing yours. Okay, so that's one of the caveats. And by the way, if someone wants to be a supporter, they can provide support to a maximum of 3 people on the one program. Okay, so I'll use myself as an example. I've gone through the QTLS program a few years ago. I've been a supporter as well. So again, any questions you have on either aspects, I'm more than pleased to answer. Finally, you need to be registered as a member of the SET. Okay, quite easy to do. You get on the website and you go through the process. So that needs to be in place prior to you completing your QTLS application. Okay, so make sure before any money is paid, anything else, get all your ducks in a row, get all the criteria sorted out, all good to go, and then you won't have any issues by paying money and then having to, in some cases, not getting a refund because you haven't had all your information in place, or maybe something happened at the last minute. Okay, so please ensure you go through the criteria. And again, I'll share a link later on about where to find the criteria which you can reference. There are 2 cohorts per year, okay, early October and January, and those cohorts have time frames, if you like. So it's not just particularly one day in October where you apply for it. There's a time frame, 2, 3, 4 weeks perhaps, where you can apply. Okay, so there is some time, some squidgy time if you're waiting for your certificate, perhaps from your awarding body or training provider, and to get all things organized as well. So that's the 2 cohorts per year, October and January, at present, that is, at present. So in terms of duration, okay, so once the process has begun. So once the date of application is completed, you have 6 months in order to complete your portfolio. Okay, and when I mention portfolio, like any other portfolio, is full of evidence, performance evidence from your practice, and also written statements from yourself. Again, the whole idea of the program is you evidence your competence and ability to be to gain the QTLS status. Okay, so there is a bit of work to do in the form of portfolio. The 6 months, as you can see there in the slide, starting in early October is an example, completing on 31st of March. So that's sort of the rough timelines of when the 6 months run after the initial registration. So in terms of the actual timetable, okay, now I will put a caveat in this, that the timetable that you see, okay, does change slightly from year to year. Okay, so the most up-to-date version you will find will be as soon as you apply for the QTLS status. Okay, but this is what it has been for those previous years. So you've got 5 different phases to work through. You've got your phase 1, self-assessment and planning. You move that into development activity, phase 2. Phase 3 is critical reflection. Phase 4, sharing with your supporter. And phase 5 is the review and moderation stage. So in terms of the QTLS timetable, and a slightly more detail, okay. Phase 1, self-assessment and planning, and here you're chatting around the first 2 months of the 6-month period. Here you've got the registration window, okay. Your issue of portfolio. Now the portfolio isn't paper-based; it's all electronic-based, as I'm sure you would imagine, and you access that through the SET portal, okay, through the website. So you would sign in as normal once you become a member, and you would then have a dedicated tab on your home screen to log into your portfolio. Okay. You then complete sections about you, qualifications, role responsibilities, all various sections. Okay. For example, the about you section, you're going to complete a declaration of suitability, i.e. your fitness to practice and complete what's required. You'll also upload your initial teacher education qualification, i.e. your DET, for example, your Maths and English qualifications, your subject specialist qualification and CV, your supporter's name and email address as well. So make sure that those details, and including the last one as well, is accurate, and you've asked permission from them to be the supporter, because they will be contacted. It's not like some other institutions who won't. The person will be contacted and will be spoken to by a member of SET. Okay. Other parts you'll complete include role and responsibilities, where you'll elaborate more on your current CV. You'll include a copy of your current teaching timetable. You'll include written statements, for example, describing your route into teaching. Where and when did you start teaching? You'll then move into your current role and responsibilities, stating clearly, the age range of your learners. And again, these need to be post-14 practice, okay, i.e. year 10 and above. So very, very important. Not primary age, not below 14. And again, you've got, perhaps 350 to 500 words of specific written statements you need to complete to fulfill that criteria. And then finally, a written statement based on your motivation for undertaking QTLS. Okay, so again, a bit of written work at the start, but if you're keen to get stuck into your portfolio, you'll find it quite easy. Okay, the motivation will be there, and it is quite straightforward. You'll then arrange your first observation. I'll talk a bit more about observations later on, but this is your first of 2 observations that you'll need to complete as part of the process. The observation will be completed by your supporter, mentor, who will complete, like your DET, like your other teaching qualification, an observation on your teaching performance. Okay. You'll then complete your self-assessment, and I'll show you professional standards in a bit. But basically, your self-assessment is based on your professional standards survey, which you take online. And again, within your portfolio, you'll have the access to the link for that to complete the self-assessment. And that self-assessment information will then help you guide your PDP, your development planning, okay, and your CPD, your professional development as well throughout the course, because you have to complete both throughout and beyond the 6-month program. Also within this time frame, you'll complete your first observation and also complete the PDP. And in terms of your observation, you'll be asked to upload all the usual documents such as your lesson plan, your self-evaluation, and of course the report from the observer who is observing you for that first session. Okay, you'll also complete your professional development plan, and this will be a copy of your plan together with notes taken from your first professional discussion with your supporter, signed and dated. Okay, so within that first professional discussion record will be a summary of the areas of practice that you want to develop, and they'll be taken from that self-assessment. Okay, so you've identified perhaps maybe your areas for development and your strong areas, and obviously the ones you want to develop will be the weaker ones perhaps. Okay, and these will be discussed and in some ways agreed with your supporter that it's the best route, the best approach to take. That's the whole idea behind a professional discussion, and also to discuss your first observation as well. The PDP, as I mentioned, it'll cover 3 main areas. Okay, the areas being planning and delivery, assessment, and subject specialist knowledge and skills. Okay, I don't want to go into too much detail about it because it's quite complex as such, but those are the 3 areas that you will place within your PDP. So it's not unlike any other traditional PDP, but there will be slightly more detail, I will say. Okay, and as I mentioned there, the first meeting with a supporter, it'll be recorded and uploaded to your portfolio as well. And at the stage, you'll make your start on your CPD record. Now, the CPD record, as I mentioned, will be influenced, impacted by that self-assessment and those 3 headings that I mentioned in terms of planning and delivery, assessment, and subject specialism, knowledge and skills. So moving on to phase 2, and phase 2 development activity, which is month 2 to 5. And again, here's where you'll continue with your CPD record. You'll record your professional reading, checking the professional standard research map. So basically what you have within your portfolio, you'll have access to your research map based on the professional standards from the Education and Training Foundation. Okay, now I do realize I'm sort of skimming over the top of this, but because of time, of course. But once you start to go through and progress through your portfolio, it'll make a lot more sense, okay, because you will have links and further reading to do to get to this stage, okay. During this time between month 2 and 5, you'll also complete, of course, your second meeting with your supporter, which will involve another professional discussion, okay. During that time as well, you'll arrange your second and final observation and also complete the remainder of your CPD activities as well, which you decided on. Phase 3, okay, you've got your critical reflection period between month 5 and 6. So pretty much at this stage, a lot of the groundwork is done. You've got all your work from the initial phases complete. You've got your teaching completed as well. So this is basically, as the name suggests, where you reflect on your performance to date. After you complete your final observation, you'll complete your critical reflection, okay? And again, your critical reflection, will be based on improvements to your practice with the learners what you've taught, okay? Your final observation report of your teaching should demonstrate an improvement in practice between your first session and that session. Okay, so it should be a meaningful trail of improvement or thread of improvement between the two. It should be identified quite easily. Okay. Again, with the final session, you will of course need to include your session plan, self-evaluation as well. Okay. Also, other things within the critical reflection, you'll reflect on your CPD and your PDP as well. What else have we got? We've got your final meeting with your supporter, of course, and you complete your final action plan. Okay, that action plan is based on your next steps. Okay, not your final action plan in relation to the portfolio, because by and large it's now complete, but moving beyond the end of the professional formation period, because what SET and the assessors want to see is you being forward thinking, of course, and being able to plan further CPD and PDP on down the line based on where you are at that particular minute in time at the end of it, because no one expects you to be all singing, all dancing at that particular stage. Okay, so it's very important that you include a final detailed action plan. And again, there will be elements of written statements as well, including, for example, how your research taken during and as part of your CPD has influenced the changes and developments that you made between your two sessions. Okay, and again, you're chatting quite wordy assignments up to and including perhaps 2,000 words. Okay. Then we get on to phase 3 and 4. Again, critical reflection and sharing with the supporter. So at this stage, you will share your portfolio with all your evidence to your supporter. Okay, so it'll be done formally. Okay, and it'll be done using the e-portfolio system. Your supporter will gain and get access to your own portfolio, only the parts obviously that are applicable, and they will review that as well. They'll be given a password username from SET, so you'll have nothing to do with that. They'll do that themselves. Then you will review your supporter's supporting statement. So, and again, we'll talk more about the supporter in a few seconds or two, so I don't want to take too much away from it, but the supporter will complete their supporting statement. And that supporting statement will basically, make your portfolio more credible, more robust, moving forward into the assessment and review stages. Also at this stage, if you haven't already done it, you need to ensure that everything's been paid in terms of the fees for the actual application, and also that your portfolio has been shared with the SET prior to the deadline. Now, this has been an issue in the past, okay? So some people perhaps know the deadline, but then they forget to share that portfolio once they're complete. Very important that you do it before the deadline, okay? Very important. So again, using that old adage, making sure your ducks in a row, make sure you've got your dates set out in your calendar, when and how to do it more so as well. Now, SET are very good. They do host a lot of webinars throughout the process to help and guide you through the process for you and the supporter, by the way. And they also have a live forum digest and post system on the portfolio as well. So there's loads of questions getting asked, and I do urge you to make sure that you become part of that forum, or at least review the questions and the answers given, okay? Because first impressions when you see the portfolio is, what do I do? Okay, it can be quite maybe slightly overwhelming to some, but it'll give an indication of, before you ask that question, look and see if it's been asked already, okay? Then we have phase 5, which is the review and moderation stage, and this is month 7, 8. So this is beyond your submission of the portfolio. And again, at this stage, the portfolio will be reviewed against the criteria. And again, the criteria being as you would expect, sufficiency, authenticity, and relevance. Okay, so very important to remember those three terms. Have you got enough evidence in your portfolio prior to pressing that share button with SET? Are you sure everything's authentic? Okay, that can't be doubted. Okay, and what I mean by authentic, that everything as it is, as you said it is, it meets the criteria, and signatures, etc., and dates are all authentic as well. Okay, very important. And again, as equally important as the information you're providing within the portfolio, is it relevant? Okay, so don't be including a load of guff, as it were. Okay, include the information that you need to include without going overboard, if that makes sense. Now, the review itself is conducted by, as you would expect, a team of, specially trained reviewers and moderators, all employed by SET. They all hold QTLS status themselves, and they come across varying sectors. Okay, so it will be viewed from a independent and reliable perspective. The portfolio will be reviewed the month following the official submission date. Okay, and you will be notified your result within 6 weeks from that month. Okay. Results themselves are released in batches, so you may not receive yours at the same time as a colleague. Okay, but you will be notified and hear by 5 p.m. on that particular day. Okay, that's always the case, and they are very reliable. So, for example, if your friend is doing it, your colleague is doing it, they may get theirs in the morning. You haven't got yours, doesn't mean you failed. It may mean you need to wait a while longer. Okay, so just make sure and be patient and don't start breakdancing, as it were. If you receive a criteria not met, hopefully it won't be the case, but if you do happen to receive a criteria not met outcome, you will get a detailed feedback report outlining the reasons for the decision. Now, in some instances, you will be asked to start the program again due to the significant weaknesses within your portfolio. And if you're required to submit the portfolio, you'll have an opportunity to discuss your feedback in detail, okay, with a member of the formation team to assist you within the resubmission. Resubmissions can take up to 6 weeks to process, okay, so while portfolios are rigorously viewed, if you disagree with the decision not to award QTLS status, you are of course entitled to appeal. Very important, like all organizations and initiatives such as this, you can appeal. Okay. Right, so I want to briefly talk about the professional standards, okay, and this is what you base your self-assessment on to start. And really, these standards are what all teachers and trainers should reach for, okay, for want of a better term. And these can be found within the ENT Foundation from the SET website as well, if you want. But basically, the professional standards for teachers and trainers are there really to, to help inspire, support your own individual career and indeed your own development based around a number of different standards. Okay, so what it does, these 3 particular areas, the 20 standards throughout. If you push yourself to develop yourself in these standards, you will become a more developed, balanced, rounded teacher and trainer who performs at a high standard. Really, that's sort of the layman's terms what they are. Now, in terms of the standards themselves, you got professional values and attributes. Well, there's 7 standards, which will help you develop your own judgment of what works and what does not work in your own teaching and training. You then have professional knowledge and understanding, and there are 5 standards which are built around the importance of subject knowledge, teaching expertise, knowledge sharing, supporting learners, with difficulties as well, of course, and professional responsibilities. And finally, you've got the third section, which is professional skills, which are 8 specific standards which support you to master planning, motivation, coaching, and assessment strategies, which enable your learners to make excellent progress. So those are the 3 sections which contain the 20 standards, 7, 5, and 8. So a small bit about the teaching observations. Again, nothing to be concerned about at all. And if you've come through a initial trainer education program, it'll be a walk in the park for you. Okay. So as I mentioned before, you'll need to have a minimum of 2 observations for your teaching, 1 at the beginning and 1 at the end. Now the dates for these are quite important as well. You have deadlines, you have checkpoints. So again, when you get into your portfolio, check the dates, make sure you know exactly when your observation needs to be completed by. Very important. And as you can see in the screen, ideally 1 within the first month and 1 towards the end, but they must be at least 3 months apart. Okay. Formal observations, as I mentioned, carried out by a manager, or informal peer observations carried out by a more experienced teacher. Okay, so they do have to be completed by someone who is competent and experienced in that role. They can be, of course, also be your supporting mentor. Yeah, so that's basically it. And all the evidence from those teaching sessions you'll upload to your portfolio as well. The online portfolio, again, quite straightforward. I've mentioned this anyway already, but just to make you aware that there's no other version. If you do need a version other than the online version, the SCT are, of course, have the reasonable adjustments in place. So if it is a case, well then I do believe you can have access to a portfolio outside of the online version, but it needs to be confirmed with them on a one-to-one basis. Okay. So yeah, within your portfolio, you'll have your evidence as mentioned, CPD, PDB, PDP, action plan, etc. The 9 sections in there, you've got your about you, qualification, roles, responsibilities, self-assessment, professional development plan, CPD record, critical reflection, final action plan, and supporting statement. So that's all the 9 sections that you'll see within the online e-portfolio. Role of supporter, and I know we basically mentioned this already, but who can be an appropriate supporter? Okay, so basically someone, as I mentioned, who holds at level 5 teaching qualification. They're able to draw upon their wide-ranging experience within a variety of sectors, ideally your sector, and obviously can give you constructive and developmental feedback based on your teaching practice. Okay. They can't be, of course, as I mentioned before, also on the QTLS system. Okay. They need to, you need to have known them, okay, in a professional capacity, excuse me, for at least 6 months. Okay, for at least 6 months. That's what the SCT recommend. Okay, but again, this information you'll place within the initial application once you go through the process. Now, just so you're aware, they cannot be related to you, okay, through birth or marriage. They cannot be in a close or personal relationship with you. They can't be a recently qualified or trainee teacher. So that's the don'ts, okay? So in terms of what they're required to do, so they're required to complete those professional discussions, 1 at the start, one at the middle, one at the end, okay? And those discussions will go a long way in evidencing your competency and your ability to communicate and set targets with that supporter. Okay, so again, don't take them as being a tick in the box. They are quite important and they are quite crucial to your overall evidence. Ideally as well, we'll be involved in the observing your teaching sessions, your 2 sessions. And they will be required to provide a constructive feedback on your entire portfolio once it's been completed. So it is a matter of going through quite a lot in terms of their involvement, but I can honestly say it is not a big time uptaker. So asking someone to do it is not really a big ask. Okay, it's not a big ask as such. All doable. And at the end, as mentioned, they will need to provide a supporting statement at the end of the process, which confirms the authenticity of your portfolio. So that's, again, I'll go back where I mentioned the importance of authenticity, that there's someone else now confirming as well that that's authentic. And again, that's somebody else's good name getting well. And they'll do that by reading all your evidence, go through all the evidence, and making sure that they believe it's a true and accurate reflection picture of your professional practice. So some top tips, almost there, folks, in relation to the application. Ensure your narrative and evidence is related to post-14 teaching practice. Okay, so again, sounds really obvious, but it needs to be. There's no way around it. Ensure you add reflective comments while completing the self-assessment for all of your 20 professional standards, because you can imagine you're going to do all this work over a period of 6 months. It will not really be reviewed by anyone else until the time for submission. And at that stage, it's going to be too late to go back to change. So make sure you do it properly. You read the instructions, such as adding those reflective comments. The reflective comments is a big part of that self-assessment for obvious reasons. Your personal development plan needs to be based on the results from your self-assessment and those findings from your 20 professional standards. Don't go off on a tangent somewhere else. Make sure you can map them across to your results. Okay, and that's the common thread that you're going to use throughout the 6 months and beyond. Complete the CPD record in the portfolio and ensure you add a minimum of 6 activity entries. You can add more, there's no issue with that, but you need to add at least 6. Now, bear in mind, everyone has a professional and personal life outside of such things such as professional status. So make sure whenever you're creating your CPD record, it's realistic. Okay, make sure you do the old SMART method of completing your CPD record. You need at least 6, but don't go overboard and do too many and then not being able to complete them and taken away from the value of the remaining 6 that you should have focused on. Okay. Make sure your critical reflection at the end tells your journey through professional formation. Okay, don't just, again, go off on a tangent. Whenever you complete your reflection, it needs to be personable. It needs to be relevant to what you've done. Okay, not somebody else's, not what you wish it could have been, not what you'd like it to be. And again, it's very important you use the proper pronouns there whenever you're writing it. Okay. Revisit the guidance and the knowledge base. Now, what the knowledge base is a part within your portfolio where you can gain more information relating to each of the stages we talked about. So if ever in doubt, head back there, read up, go and do the task. If you get halfway through, go back and check again, come back and do it. Make sure it's done to the best and as perfect as you can to what they're asking. Because as I said before, once you come to the submission point, it's too late to turn back. Make sure you do the old one, and we're all guilty of it at some stage, is proofread your portfolio, okay, for your SPAGs, okay, and also ensuring your dates, your signatures are correct as well. Very important. Right, so what we have here are some further reading and resources which you can take away from this session, okay. You've got the Education and Training Foundation, okay, link. You've got the Society for Education and Training. And finally, you've got the gov.uk, where it just tells you more, as I mentioned before, about the equivalency of the QTLS and the QTS in the event that anyone tries to tell you different. Okay, these links I'll post in chat after I complete, so you can use them to look up the relevant information. And again, of course, at this stage, you need to come back to myself. I'll give the email address in a second or two. By all means, you can. If you want more information, we can discuss it over an email, or quite happy to lift the phone and have a chat about it as well. No issue whatsoever. And again, just a reminder to stay in the chat. I'm going to drop you a link in a second or two for a feedback survey, if that's okay. But before we do that, do we have any questions? So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pop into the question and answer box. I'm just going to go through some of your questions to date. Yeah, so basically the DET is certainly built on the 120 credits. So you need to have the full qualification, including the optional units completed. It needs to be processed by the awarding body. You need to have your certificate in your hand. And again, I'll use that again, in your hand, so you can show the SET. It doesn't matter if you have a support letter, doesn't matter, you need the actual physical certificate to support your application. And you will be asked for it within 2 weeks of starting the process. Now, the process isn't particularly cheap, especially these days. So make sure that you do have it, you don't take a chance, so it doesn't end up you wasting money or delaying the process. You not lose your money, but you could end up losing the time space between you being able to get the opportunity to do the QTLS. Just reading all our questions here, folks. QTLS and QTS will allow you to both teach in those secondary schools. QTLS goes beyond it, post-14, post-16 sector, adult sector. And this very much depends as well. It isn't as black and white as you'd think it should be, because there are some training establishments, sectors, which will allow QTS to teach in the adult sphere, which they should do. This depends on the type of PGCE or initial training education certificate that they have. Okay, so it isn't black and white. If you need any confirmation of it, always the first place to go to, whenever you want to confirm if you can teach something, is the qualification specification, and everything on the QCF RQF framework has got a specification. Okay, so it's your first protocol. That's how you'll know that your qualification will suit that particular subject. Yes, we do provide support and guidance during the QTLS application. Now, in terms of support and guidance, it's going to be through help and guidance from myself or one of my colleagues, perhaps via email, over the phone. We're not going to, organize your administration for you to apply for, help you with payments. Obviously, that's not the case at all. That's just your ball game. That's your domain. We will certainly help and guide. Advise you. We'll advise you on certain things, but we're not going to tell you to do things that it should be down to you to decide. Okay, you need to make decisions at the end of the day for most things in life. So you will have that sole responsibility to take yourself through the process. Reach the other side, we will certainly do our utmost to help and guide you through that process. But again, that's limited as well. That depends exactly how far that goes. Okay, that's all saying that. Every case can be different. Any more questions, folks? No, I don't see any more there. Okay, so what I'll do, I'm just going to stop sharing for the time being. Okay, just want you to stay online. Do not disappear, please. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to place these links that I mentioned into the chat box. Okay. And please, by all means, feel free to use them. The first one we've got going in is the ETF, Education and Training Foundation. Next, we have the SET, sorry. And last but not least, we've got the gov.uk. And last but no means least, I'm going to give you the link for the survey. Okay. And I'd really appreciate it if you can take a time and go in and tell us what you think of the session. We're always keen to improve, of course, like everyone should be. And yeah, does anybody else have any questions before we finish? Okay, thank you very much indeed, folks. And I shall catch you there.